My name is Dan. I'm the chair. I'm a councillor in Syon of Brentford Lock. Perhaps if the other councillors would like to introduce themselves as well.
Is it on? Councillor Marina Sharma, Brentford East.
Hello, I'm Councillor Rhys Williams, also representing Brentford East.
I'm Bill. I'm the clerk, not a councillor.
Hi, I'm Lara, councillor for Brentford West. Why is mine so much?
Catherine Dunn, councillor for Syon and Brentford Lock. Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I'm Guy Lambert, Brentford West. Thank you.
Okay, are there any apologies for absence? No.
We've had Councillor Balraj Sarai has sent apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you. And members are asked to note the monitoring officer's guidance on members' declaration of interest. So the first item we've got is a presentation and it's going to be on community infrastructure levy and section 106. It does say on the agenda that it was Nathan Ringer, and a slight change, it's actually going to be Matthew Rees and also Bill Reid. I think I'll give you guys just 30 seconds to let things quieten down, let everyone find a seat.
The dog can come to the front as well.
Yeah, dog can come to the front. Excellent. So, yeah, whenever you guys are ready, please go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I'm not Nathan Ringer. My name is Matthew Rees. I'm Head of Development Management. So apologies, I've been drafted in at the last minute. So I may be reading some of these slides with you, but I am the head of the department, so you would expect me to know a number of these things. But first of all, I'll just say, I'm just going to first of all say, it is nice to be here, though, because I think a lot of you have engaged with me and my department on a number of different issues, and it's always done in quite a negative light, and that's not me being pessimistic, sorry. Normally, people that engage with the planning process do so to object to a scheme if they've got an enforcement complaint. That's generally where the interest in planning department and my team comes from. So my team are the team that make recommendations and decisions on planning applications. There are positive things that we do, and so what we're talking about tonight is some of the positive things that come out of the planning applications and the planning decisions that we make. So yeah, it's nice to have the opportunity to do so. What I'll also add is Section 106, SIL, sorry about these acronyms, we do it all the time. Section 106 refers to a paragraph in a piece of legislation. SIL stands for Community Infrastructure Levy, and maybe I'll start off by just explaining briefly what they are. Essentially, Section 106 agreements have been around for an awfully long time, decades, and what they've always been is actually, sorry, this is the first slide, what they've always been is, it's a legal agreement, and what they're supposed to do is when we approve a scheme, we attach certain clauses to an approval through a legal agreement that seeks to secure planning gain. And what it's meant to mean is mitigate the impacts of development which would make a proposal acceptable in planning terms where it otherwise would not be. People may disagree with that acceptability, but it's something that the officer's view is needed. But there are some quite firm criteria against which we have to assess these Section 106 agreements. And I'll just swiftly add, sorry, because Bill sat next to me is going to talk about SIL. Community Infrastructure Levy came in 2015, 14, about 10 years ago. It in part replaced Section 106 agreements, so it kind of took over a lot of the infrastructure funding that came out of it. So Section 106 agreements is negotiated by an officer based on the site. A SIL is like a tax, it's a flat rate. Sorry, Bill, I'm taking your thunder there. So Bill will talk a little bit more about that. So what some of these slides start getting entirely technical, sorry, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but what planning applications have to be is they're necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, so we can't just ask for anything to be on there. It has to be related to development to make it acceptable. It needs to directly relate to the development, so if you've got a development in Brentford, for instance, you can't ask for some improvements to a school in Feltham. They're not related, the two aren't linked. And the contribution has to be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. And I've got plenty of examples of what that means as I move through the presentation. So when is the Section 106 required? Generally, for major applications. So major applications are 10 or more homes, 1,000 square metres or more of commercial floor space. There will almost always be a Section 106 agreement attached to those applications because that's where the planning gains comes from. There are some minor applications with site-specific problems that will also have a Section 106 attached to it. Basically, there's a document called a planning obligation strategy. Again, you probably may not want to go through the detail of it, but it explains all of the caveats and requirements of when a Section 106 is required. And then there's a list of when a Section 106 is not required, so it's deemed that planning gain is not required for applications such as HMOs, household applications, so household extensions, permitted development rights, small schemes, adverts and such. So the next slide is typical obligations. So when we publish reports on planning applications, if you do get involved in the planning system in that way, particularly the planning committee reports, if you go to the end of the planning committee report through the 70 pages of details, sorry for that, there is something called a heads of terms. And what the heads of terms does is it lists what planning gains we are asking for as part of a potential approval of a planning application. And this is a very brief review of what they are. So a very important one is affordable housing. So I don't need to talk about problems with housing in the country, in the borough, the affordability of housing. We always seek to maximise the amount of affordable housing in developments that have got housing attached to it. And then there's a viability review attached to that as well. So when we assess the amount of affordable housing, it's based on the viability scheme, how much they can afford to give us in terms of affordable housing. And then the viability review is meant to capture any uplift if the market gets better over in a period of time since the permission was granted and the building was constructed, then we will capture some of that uplift. Sustainable travel is an important one that's generally attached to most applications. Carbon offset payments. So carbon offset payments come in if a scheme is not carbon neutral. So where a scheme is not carbon neutral, they have to pay us a sum of money as a kind of tax to make it net carbon neutral. Construction training and job brokerage training are very important as well. So any scheme will have a construction training commitment attached to it so that local people get to have training on construction on site, on the jobs. And job brokerage is similar in terms of training. So the end user, the people, the shops, the commercial units, they have local people trained in that. Considerate contractor scheme is probably quite important to a number of people as well. Certain developers have to sign up to be a considerate contractor, so that controls the building works. Future district heating network, another important one. If we are to have a district heating network in a borough, we always ask for space to be given over so that schemes can connect to it. Architect protection clause, that's getting into some detail. Basically, larger schemes, if there are reserve matters, ongoing conditions, if there's phasing, then we ask for the same architect to be used across all of the schemes. And healthcare, I'm going to come on to with practical examples that are coming up. So, there you go, sorry, slide on healthcare. So when it comes to healthcare, it's obviously a very big issue and there's very limited control the council can exercise over that. That could fill a whole planning forum. It comes from central government, it comes from the NHS. But what the NHS do is they present us with a way of calculating how much money should go to at the NHS to facilities in the borough, specifically in the borough, in proximity to the application site. It's called the Hoodoo model, sorry, another acronym. It's called Healthy Urban Development Unit, but basically what we do is we type in number of homes, number of bedrooms, it tells us how much money we need to be collecting, and then that is allocated to a health facility within the borough. And now what I have are some examples. Some of them may be familiar to you, some of them might not be. So the Victory Business Centre was an approval from last year for 33 new flats. This is down by the Mogden Sewage Works. And so this is basically the heads of terms, and what Nathan's done is he's listed the heads of terms that are attached to those schemes, and you get a flavour of what we're seeking. So the NHS contributions in there, construction training, carbon offset funds, and job brokerage. So around £100,000 of money collected for that one, and the £80,000 is for primary healthcare facilities at West Middlesex University Hospital. Manston House, a number of you may be familiar with that, that's just west of the High Street on Commerce Road. And that was an application for 111 flats and commercial at ground floor level. So the heads of terms for that, which will be collected. A place-based contribution, so we didn't mention that before, but place-based contributions are quite important if we believe that there's a shortfall in amenity space. Again, a future railway park contribution, so that's a similar issue. Open space enhancements, again, so lots of money we're going towards amenity space in the area, and also there was money was secured for access to a potential future B-line, I think it's called now, the high line behind it. Public realm improvements, again, that's fairly standard, and the NHS contribution. Charlton House, which is further to the east of Brentford High Street. I don't know if people know it, but this is a council-owned scheme, so the council don't get away with it. They have to do their own obligations as well. 209 homes, 100% affordable, and then, again, sustainable travel, play space, and NHS, and also restriction on resident parking permits. That's quite a common one as well, so we'll stop residents of new schemes applying for parking permits within controlled parking zones. I have not been carrying on, sorry. And then Heidelberg, again, many of you will be familiar with that. That's just to the west of the Ballymore project. So that was 333 new homes and commercial floor space. So as part of that, we had heads of terms to secure public realm, highways works. I think you're getting the idea at this point, aren't you? 595,000 towards healthcare in Brentford. So I've talked about schemes that have been recently approved, and presumably we haven't collected much money of that yet. So the big one that you all know is the Brentford project, the Ballymore scheme to the land south of the High Street. So this is 876 units. So a lot of this will have been collected, and a lot of this will have been allocated and spent as well. So this gives you a flavour of what connected as part of that scheme. And this is back in 2014, 2015, so quite a long time ago. And there you go, 1.7 million towards education, community facilities, £135,000, bus improvements, £405,000, and highways contribution of 1.5 million. So that's a quite big scheme. So that's what we talk about when it has to be comparable to the scale of the scheme proposed. I finished my slides. So Bill is here to talk about SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy. He is responsible for collecting it. I'll let you explain more.
Hello? That's good. Right, I'm very grateful to the Area Forum for inviting me to say a little bit about the Community Infrastructure Levy. And my aim is that at the end of what I've said, and if you've had any questions, you'll know enough to be able to explain some of the things that happen to any of your friends or neighbours or colleagues who want to know why this has been done or why that has been done in planning terms. So you've all got, I hope, my little handout. Yeah, let's see you wave it in the air. Thank you, right. So, once upon a time, the government decided that developers were putting up a lot of big buildings and they weren't necessarily making the appropriate contribution that they should do to public infrastructure. And they also thought that the Section 106 agreement that Mr. Rees has just explained to you was unwieldy and didn't give enough certainty to developers about what they would need to contribute before they started their development. So now we have this legislation which the council has adopted and which it's my job to try and enforce, called the Community Infrastructure Levy. And what that means is, if you're a developer putting up a big building, or a small building, or in many cases, just a household extension, you will be charged a levy, and I'll explain how we charge it in a moment, but you'll be charged a levy, and that will contribute towards the cost of the public infrastructure that would be needed to support the residents or the users of the building in the future. So it's a very tenuous relationship. There's an algebraic equation which tells me how much money I charge a developer, and then that's accumulated into a pot of money that is ultimately available to the council and indeed to the Mayor of London, who collects money in the same way as we do, to spend on public infrastructure and also on small community projects as well. So I'll come on to that in a moment. So if you're building a single house, say, and it's 100 square metres, as it might be, that's a decent sized house, you will be charged a certain amount of money, depending upon where it is in the borough, in Hounslow, and you will be charged that amount of money shortly after you start doing the development. And I'll gladly accept that money and put it into the council's bank until such time as it comes to spend it. Most people pay up quite without too much reluctance. Some people are quite reluctant to pay up. Some people haven't taken it into account that they're going to need to make that payment. But ultimately, we get the money and it's in our piggy bank ready to spend. There are exemptions. If this church were to be built today, it wouldn't pay any community infrastructure levy. Charities, hospitals, self-build, and affordable housing can be exempt from SIL. So, we've got this pot of money now. 5% of it is used to pay for the cost of collecting the money. So that goes into the council pot for salaries. 15% of the money is used to pay for small community projects. And I can give you lots of examples of what those projects are or have been. The 80% is known as the strategic infrastructure levy, and that means that it's used to pay for infrastructure projects that might not otherwise get funded, or might the infrastructure levy contributes towards it across the whole of the borough. So when we say strategic, that means it doesn't necessarily have to be in the immediate vicinity of the big development that has accrued that money to the council. So the process of allocating the small amount, the 15%, is done through what's called thriving communities. So there's several sources of pots of money that come together, and that is regularly allocated on the basis of bids from small community groups, groups like those who were in the marketplace earlier. That process is, that takes place on a regular basis. The strategic infrastructure levy, that's the 80%, is allocated once a year by the council's cabinet. So, if I tell you that it's now the end of February and the council's cabinet have just allocated all of the money that was collected in the financial year 22-23, that is to say, it was collected up until the end of March, nearly a year ago, and it's taken that 10 months to get that bidding process in. So what happens is, people like Thames Water, people like the London Underground, people like the electricity suppliers, the Parks Department, GPs and health, put in their bids. They have to develop their bids, they have to have them assessed, they have to be recommended to the council, and finally the council takes a decision. And that's a process that we don't take lightly. It takes a long time to assess these against the council's policies and priorities, and against what's called the infrastructure statement, which sets out what we're trying to achieve. So a lot of money has been spent. And if I tell you that the council's cabinet, 9 days ago, allocated £3.2 million on infrastructure projects. Next year, they'll have something like £10 million to allocate. So these are big decisions, and very important ones too. So on the presentation, on the handout, there's a list of some of the significant developments that have taken place in the Brentford area and Syon area, and also over the page a list of the projects that the council decided to fund. So Mr. Rees has shown you some of the significant projects that have been approved around, they generally have paid CIL. CIL is shortcut for Community Infrastructure Levy. So Cubridge Road, £406,000. A building, residential building at 92 to 94 Windmill Road, £22,000. Now you'll all be aware of the GTEC Stadium and all the residential development taking place around that. That scheme was approved before the Community Infrastructure Levy came into place in Hounslow, so it pays no money, unfortunately. Otherwise, there'd be quite a lot coming in for that. For those people who know, on the other side of Kew Bridge, work being done at Capital Interchange Way and extending way up into the sky, that's likely to bring in something like £12 million to the council at some point. Scheme at all the Brentford, the Ballymore scheme has been referred to. Thank you. That too was approved in principle before the Community Infrastructure Levy was brought into place. So some of the big developments that are still happening, we have to acknowledge, unfortunately, that they got in before the Community Infrastructure Levy liability was in place. Now, I said that the council allocated £3.2 million, and on the back of the handout is a list of the projects that were approved by the council. And somebody's going to tell me that none of them are in Brentford or Syon. Yeah, I know that. That's why I referred to it earlier as a strategic pot. The council has to take strategic priorities and put those ahead of what are the local considerations. So, unfortunately, on this occasion, nothing was bid for that was significantly prioritised enough to allow the council to give any money into this area. I have to tell you that the previous year, the council allocated 1.15 million out of a total of 2.8 million. It's there. So over 40% of the money in the previous year was allocated into this local area forum area. So it swings and roundabouts. Some years you win, some years you lose. But the bigger picture is that the whole of the Community Infrastructure Levy pot is of benefit to everybody across the whole of the borough. So that's the best way to look at it. There will have been numerous small projects funded through the Community Infrastructure Levy neighbourhood pot as part of the thriving communities that are of direct benefit to groups and people in this area. But it doesn't always work out as a straightforward equation between money's come in to this area and money's been spent in this area. So that's a run through of what the Community Infrastructure Levy is, how it's collected, how it's spent, and the kind of things that we spend it on. I'm happy, I'm sure Mr. Rees is, to take any questions about the process. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you. So, in a rare turn of events, the first person with her hand up is Julie. So if we can get a microphone to Julie.
When's that anything not new? Right, firstly, I am totally disgusted about some of the things that have been said tonight because I have been involved in development of Brentford when it was a single Brentford regeneration, and pots of money were being offered left, right and centre. Now you're saying that most of these developers haven't given a penny. So what happened to it? I'm not saying it's gone. We sat at meetings by companies promising for all these developments would be given money. how Brentford was going to look, which never did turn out like. So, my question is, who sat on these committees and said, don't bother giving any money? The other thing is the actual money about the controlled parking zones. The money goes back to the council when you get a parking ticket. So we've actually had Section 106 money paid out for the community, but we're being fined for parking. So that's my point at the moment.
Thank you, Julie. And I think if I've understood, this might be in reference to the projects you're talking about that weren't liable for SIL, but I think they were liable for other payments. So I think that's what that question's about.
No, this was to do with the redevelopment of Brentford. Section 106 money, I know for our section, because where we live, we actually got the community money, and this is going back to 2000. We actually got a community centre out of it, because we sat there and worked with everyone. So it did happen. So my question was, why didn't it happen in Brentford with all these developments? We need schools, we need doctors, and we're not getting nothing. So where's all the rest of that money's gone?
I don't believe we've referred to any schemes that didn't have any kind of planning contributions attached to them. Bill made a comment about not contributing to the community infrastructure levy. That's because it's not new, but it's a relatively new piece of legislation. So before community infrastructure levy, they were done through the Section 106 process, which I was talking about. So we used to be able to take Section 106 monies and pool them together for infrastructure. So we used to be able to take them from different sites. So that changed, that stopped, and then they started putting it into SIL. So it's just a different system for collecting money for infrastructure because it's already been there. On the matter of controlled parking zones, I'm going to try and be a transport planner here. I'm not going to do it very well. But my understanding is that we consult on controlled parking zones. So one of the key features of the Section 106, if it's going to be a new one, is that we will consult on it. So we won't necessarily oblige residents to take it on board. It will be a consultation exercise, and the money will go towards that and then implementing it thereafter. So my understanding is that it's still open to residents to object to having a controlled parking zone in the area.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions? Gentleman down here in the front, fastest finger first. If you can wait for the microphone, it's because there might be some people who have harder hearing, who are using the hearing loop, and also that this is recorded, and it's really important that people can hear your question.
Thank you. Well, I'm new around here, but I would have thought, listening to what you said about infrastructure, I would have thought that food would have been a major part of infrastructure in this area. Currently, where Morrison's moved out, is still vacant, is open, and I understand that's going to be made into more apartments. Look around, we've built apartment land. Thousands of people living here, thousands more coming. All of them needing to buy from a really expensive Morrison's. What is wrong with that? Their prices are corner shop prices. They're almost printing money. Is this on purpose? Why not, where Morrison's moved away, why not let someone like Tesco's or Aldi or one of the other big companies move in there? At the moment, I walk into Morrison's, they are permanently restocking because they're selling food so fast.
Thank you. So just so everyone's got a chance, can I ask you to bring that to a specific question? Is it one, are we allowing more supermarkets? Is that?
Okay, the place where Morrison's moved out, why has it been made into yet more apartments rather than made into infrastructure designed for food purchasing?
Thank you. Matthew, do you want to come to that?
Yeah, thank you. I can't comment on the pricings of Morrison's. There's certain things that the market dictates that are beyond our control. No, I don't doubt you. I certainly don't doubt you. So what happens when, with the Morrison's planning application, so the old site of the Morrison's, when that came in, again, we did use a Section 106 agreement, and what that Section 106 agreement sought to ensure that there was still a supermarket in the centre of Brentford. So that clause was to either have it in the new Ballymore development where it is now, or there was supposed to be a fallback position until that was implemented, where there would be options to travel to a supermarket for people who couldn't have easy access to a supermarket. They have. I mean, it's always just been. Right, sorry, I don't know if it's always just been amongst us. Yeah, I'm not going to argue, to be perfectly honest. I mean, like, as in, there's certain things that are market-led that we can't oppose, and what we did try and do is ensure that there was a supermarket in place in Brentford.
Catherine.
So the old Morrison site, the planning permission that was granted there was for both retail and housing, and that development hasn't currently gone ahead. I mean, Guy knows more about this than most because he makes it his business to get in touch with the current owners and find out what's happening. So I don't know if you've got any update for us there, Guy.
I'm not quite up to date, but the last, I know that the owner is an outfit called L&Q, which is a housing association. They bought the freehold of where the old Morrison's is. Their plan was to build what Kath just said, but they haven't done it, and they can't do it, and they can't do it because of Liz Truss, basically, because the financial cost of building has gone through the roof, mainly about interest. So sorry, let me carry on. What L&Q are doing in the short term, and I don't know how long the short term is they are reletting the Morrison's building as it is to a supermarket.
Thank you, Guy.
I can't tell you who because it hasn't been signed yet, but I can say it will be an economical.
I can comment. I've discovered one retailer that it's not going to be. I can formally confirm it's not Harrods. That's the information we've got. Do you have any more questions? Yes, this lady here.
Yes, so I've lived in the area for over 28 years. And my question is to do with transport. All these extra buildings, all these extra residential, where are these people going to get on a train or a bus? Because when I commuted into town, and I've been retired for 8 years, the public transport at peak hours was already packed. You can't put any more trains in place than 4 an hour because of the logistics of getting them out onto the line at Barnes. And I just wondered where all these people are going to get into work from. And I know there's a lot more people working from home, but it is going to be absolutely ridiculous, especially once they build on the home-based site and put all the flats up there. You know, you can't get a seat on the train at Zion Lane in the morning as it is.
Thank you. Matthew, do you feel have to go?
So you're quite right. So when we are approving schemes within a town centre, recommending approval of schemes in a town centre, they generally are car-free. So we have a policy that seeks to minimise the parking. And you're quite right, that does have a resultant impact on the public transport. So again, this is part of what the Section 106 agreements do, is that we can get contributions to station improvements, we can get contributions to bus improvements, but we don't manage that ourselves. So Transport for London do the bus network, and then obviously Network Rail do the railways, so that the money has to go to them. I mean, the bottom line is always that we have an obligation as the council imposed on us to provide a certain amount of housing, and we're obliged to approve a certain amount of housing in the borough. And I know it sometimes feels like the cart before the horse and improving them and getting the contributions later, but there will be plans in place to improve the public transport as and when these schemes come forward. As I say, there's only so much confidence I can have in saying that because it goes beyond our responsibility. It goes into the TfL and Network Rail, but this is what Section 106 is for. It's one of these reasons for it.
But are you saying we make the contribution to TfL and they spend on the upgrades?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add, I think on this one, for instance, things like the West London Orbital Railway line, which you may have heard about, which is going to be bringing back into use the freight line that runs up to Willesden Junction. So that is something that we know TfL are working on. And when we talk about things like strategic infrastructure levy, that's exactly the sort of things that when the time comes, we will probably be using some of this money to allocate to do, because there'll be a new train station at Larnell Road by the football stadium, and I'm sure that TfL will ask us for a contribution, and I'm sure we'll be happy to make it. That's the definition of strategic infrastructure, and I think that's the sort of stuff that this money is for. So there is investment going into TfL and Network Rail through the money we raise in this way.
Great point. Thank you, Rhys. I think there was a question. Was it here? I saw a hand. Has it disappeared now?
My question is connected with the Brentford project, with Morrison's as well.
Can you try and speak directly into the microphone?
Will it always be the case that when you come out of Morrison's car park, you have to do an extra half a mile before you can turn onto High Street again? Because it seems to me a bit silly.
Yes, I think actually Catherine Dunn, who's the lead member for Transport, is better placed to answer that.
Yeah, so it is very relevant from a planning context, because it was due to a planning condition that particular route exit from Morrison's is used, and that was based on traffic modelling and things that were done at the time. Now, what has come to pass it seems to be quite different from what our models back at the time were telling us, and so we are re-looking at that and whether that is the best way to send traffic, or whether it would not be, and whether it's best for them to come straight out onto the high street. So that. Yeah. So. Yeah, I understand.
Just listen to the answer. We are very aware of the problem, and there's a lot of work doing. So just allow Catherine to answer.
Yeah. So that is being looked at, and there may well be a change in the recommendation there, and then obviously the requisite change. There may need to be a change to the planning consent in order to make that happen. They do. Yes. Yeah.
Any other questions? Jim Storer, I think I saw. Put your hand up, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear that? It's about a question. Thanks for the presentation, Matt and William. It's very useful. My question is very specifically on SIL, and within that, as William said, SIL is allocated to 3 pots: 80% for strategic projects, 5% for administration, 15% for local SIL or neighbourhood SIL. Now, the regulations, the central government regulations, don't specify anywhere what constitutes a neighbourhood within a borough for the allocation of the neighbourhood portion. Hounslow, at some point, chose the whole borough to be the neighbourhood, the entire borough of Hounslow. Now, I don't know, just a little bit of research suggests that Hounslow may be out of sync with, I think, just about every other London borough that I managed to have a look at, where that 15%, the SIL, is actually allocated to small neighbourhood areas, perhaps the size represented by this forum here, and even in some boroughs to a ward level. I mean, the basic principle being that investment from SIL monies should be applied to the areas which are undergoing the most development, and certainly Brentford, I don't know what's happening elsewhere, certainly Brentford is undergoing extraordinary. Now, the argument against this is we wonder if rather than getting the whole 15% of everything that is built in Brentford to be allocated to local SIL, perhaps 10% would do, in the expectation that in the future, sites in Brentford might dry up. But we're an awful long way from that yet. And I just wonder if there is any appetite to change the definition of a neighbourhood within Hounslow.
Well, the first part of the answer is the way in which the levy is distributed has been set in part by the legislation, and there are different aspects of the legislation for rural areas and for neighbourhoods in the sense of a local neighbourhood parish plan, that kind of thing. But the regulations are read alongside a decision of the council about the proportion it wants to spend and how that will be introduced into the Thriving Communities Fund. And the regulations set by the Thriving Community Fund about how projects will be assessed and the scale of the projects and the locality into which they reflect need is something that is administered and run by colleagues running the Thriving Community Fund. Now, whether there's any appetite for changing that in any way is not something that I'm in a position to answer. From our point of view, as a council, it seems as though the Thriving Community Fund does an excellent job in getting the money to the groups that need it on the ground, and it's distributed according to what we think seems to be an equitable basis. But if there are other suggestions about the way in which that money could be allocated, I'm sure we'd be very happy to hear them.
Thank you, Bill. Catherine and Rhys want to come in, and if I can just, if we're to keep this relatively brief, because I know there's a few more questions, we are running out of time on this item. So if we can if it's possible to keep your questions as brief as possible, that'd be great, Catherine.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I understand the rationale for what you're saying. But I mean, I think there's pros and cons of different ways of doing it and different ways of distributing the money. And, you know, some of the cons might be, you talked about what happens if development dries up, and then you would find you would be allocated less if you were doing it on that kind of system with smaller neighbourhoods. But also, I mean, I don't know what proportion is of the neighbourhood still is spent in this area. You may find that you actually, you know, Brentford's punching above its weight anyway, and so you could end up with less going. But also, I think it's, you know, like the strategic still, we saw that one year, you know, this area had done really well, another year it's going to other areas, and so you do get that sort of swings and roundabouts effect, the fact that, you know, one year you might get fantastic bids from community groups that happen to, you know, be more concentrated in one area, and another year it might be another. So I think overall the distribution works pretty well.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I would just add, I mean, again, I think I would have encouraged taking a less geographical specific idea of things having to be located in an area to benefit an area. So for instance, funding rail improvements that will improve the entire network benefit Brentford. We'll see we've already allocated previously £1 million towards the new ambulatory diagnostic centre at West Middlesex Hospital. That will inevitably, when that diagnostic centre arrives, benefit the residents of Brentford. That's not being built in Brentford, but we all use that hospital. So I think, you know, we have strategic means strategic, and I think a lot of the things that that this funding is for go in other directions. I think the other thing to add just quickly, SIL is one way money is collected, as we've talked about, but 106 is the other. 106 secures community benefits on the sites that are being developed themselves. So, and the good thing about that is they get built when the developments get built. So for instance, SIL money, we've collected about £40 million in the last 8 years. Section 106, in the last 5 years, we've collected about £30 million. And the good thing about that is most of that's already been spent because the developers spent it at the time that they were building the stuff. So, and actually, if you look at the sites that have come forward, there are benefits, there are better things there than were there before that actually everyone in Brentford benefits from. So I think it needs to be looked at in the round.
Thank you, Rhys. Anyone who hasn't asked a question? The lady here.
I want to ask about the works that is going on in front of Waterman's. What I want to know is, was the community consulted? Is there an option for the community to be consulted? Because the road has been so narrowed, the cycle lane is there, and next to the cycle lane there's a huge path. So there's room for one car, just one lane. It used to be two, and it's going to...
Okay, this is a question for the general open forum, so I'll ask you to ask that question in the next section, and you will get an answer. So any other questions on SIL or S106? The lady just here in the second row.
Thank you very much, Deborah Burns. I asked this question at a previous forum. It's to do with supply of primary health care. And I remember on a previous occasion saying, you know, we've got all these new people coming into the area, and yet the strain on our local GP practices just seems intolerable. And I see in the S106 there's money specifically allocated for primary care in several of these projects. But I remember from a previous discussion that the responsibility is with the NHS to provide primary health care in any given area, but it was just, and I quote, too difficult to attract people to want to come and work in Brentford, and therefore sorry, I'm just saying what was said before. Anyway, the upshot of it is that we don't seem, and I apologise if I've missed something going up, we don't seem to be seeing any new GP practices being built, GP health centres. We've got one just up the road here, which used to have 4 practices and now has got 3. It takes nearly a month to get an appointment.
So can you bring this to a specific question?
The question is, can you help us at all in what specifically you're doing to encourage the NHS to put new practices, healthcare practices into the borough to support all these new buildings which are going up? Because I don't see it.
Thank you. I think Guy Lampo wants to come in on this.
Yeah, I've fairly recently I've got some kind of health responsibilities. I mean, the truth about doctors, about GPs, is there aren't any. We were promised 5,000 extra, and what's actually happened is that there's 1,000 less. And many GPs are thinking of leaving the NHS or leaving the country because they find the way that NHS is run at the moment is not acceptable. So when I was in the early days when I was a councillor, I was for all of Brentford, and I know that in GWQ that was built before I was a councillor, there was something set aside there for a practice, but nobody took it. And this is often the case with, we try to provide buildings for doctors, but there aren't any doctors, so they don't want to take Now, this is a London-wide. It's a countrywide issue, but it's in particular. I serve on something which is called the North West London something or other to do with NHS. And we had a meeting this week where some of the people were very upset about, in some boroughs, it's almost impossible to get a speedy GP appointment. I'm not saying we don't have that problem in Hounslow, but we don't have it very much. Other places it's much worse. But that is clearly a key issue that the health service and the councils working together are trying to improve.
Thank you. We are running out of time on this item, and there's some people who haven't had a question. So if there's time to come back to our will, I know there's a question at the back.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I grew up on Dragon still, and so I've been here for a while, and I've seen a lot of planning going on in the area.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, there's a lot of planning in the area that, over the years, that's just, I'm not going to speak about it. But more time, there's a couple of questions that I need to ask, and I don't know if I'll get to the second one, but I'll deal with the first one, which is quite direct, something that's going on now. I don't live too far from the roadworks that's going on in the area, And what's happened is that the bike lanes that you've got in the area, you've got one that's running through. When you come from the North Road towards the Ealing Road, you've got a bike lane that's running in the Watermans, through the Watermans Park.
I'm just going to stop you because
All right.
this question
It's for planning. Is there anybody that's compliance planning that's here today?
This question is going to be suited for the next section, which is the open forum, and we've only got these guys for a small section. So you will have your question answered, but it's just going to be in the next section.
Okay, then.
That's right. So
All
if
right,
anyone's
then.
got any more
All right,
questions,
I'll leave it for the next
we will come back to your question. If anyone's got any before Bill and Matt leave, there's a question. Yeah. Just pop your hand up again, Julia. Yeah.
I just would like to ask, the social housing block on the High Street and the commercial units there, will there be any concessions to local small businesses, groups? I'm getting lots and lots and lots of inquiries for those commercial units, and I've tried to speak to people at the council, and I'm not getting any answers back. I mean, obviously fee paying, but also local groups, so that at least if there's something for community groups who are selling something, making something.
Thank you. Does
There's
anyone
a lot of units there
Yes,
to be
there
filled.
are. Catherine, do you want to come in on that? Or?
Yeah, I can. I mean, Matthew's ready to. Okay. Well, I was going to say there is a strategy for letting those units, and it involves trying to do the right thing by local businesses and groups that initially ones that have been displaced from other units that are being redeveloped. So I'm thinking about the ones on Albany Parade. So they get almost like first dibs. And then looking at the north side of the high street and businesses that may wish to move across into that unit, Block D, and then looking more widely, but still with a focus on local businesses, local groups. I believe there is some, I don't know the details, but there are certain conditions and things around the rent that will be in place for a certain number of years to encourage and enable local and small businesses.
Great, thank you, Catherine. We've got 6 minutes left on this item. Any more questions around S106 or SIL? Can't see any hands, so you can come back with your follow-up.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Guy for his earlier comments. I was trying really to be careful to say I understand that there's a problem in trying to attract doctors. What I'm asking is, what are we doing in Hounslow or in Brentford and Syon to try and get ahead of the game and make it attractive for doctors to come here? I've said this before. I think the council have a duty of care both to the people who are currently residents and have been residents here for 20, 30, 40, 60 years, that our services are just going down and down and down whilst all these new developments are coming on. And I really just challenge the basic premise of how can you put up all these new buildings when you know there's not going to be enough GP cover for all these people who are going to come and live there.
If I can make a basic point, yes, it's not good enough that we don't have enough GPs and enough doctors in this country to serve the population, but it would be worse if we didn't have the housing for people to live in as well.
I think another thing on that, one of the main reasons we struggle to attract medical professionals to work in this borough is because of the cost of housing. And one of the best levers the council has to deal with the cost of housing is to facilitate the building of more homes. I appreciate it's a sort of a chicken and egg situation, but I think it is relevant. Any more questions on
agree to differ.
SIL or S106? Is that a hand at the back? Okay. Is this on SIL and S106?
S106.
Go for
Syon
it.
S106 have any compliance when it comes to the planning, naming of the area, naming of roads, buildings that's in the area as well? Because you've got something to do with funding. Do you have any form of compliance when it comes to planning, when it comes to those kind of the naming of the area or anything like that? Is there anybody here that?
There is a street naming and numbering aspect of the council which isn't run by the development and the planning team, but that's not to say it's not within the control of the council, so it's probably a case of taking away your details if possible, and then we'll get back to you on that particular issue, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, because, I mean, the place is getting named out of existence, really. I mean, if the Edward VII Bridge wasn't there, which is what the bridge is called, it's not Kew Bridge, well, this place is getting named Kew now. QI, tallest place in Brentford, it's called QI, all that kind of stuff there. Like, you got Kew Heights, that building that's going up by the Brentford football ground. Mate, you know what I mean? Anyway, if that's a question that I can get answers today by compliance or planning, that would be cool as well. You know what I mean? I think, you know? Chisholm roundabout, Gunnersby roundabout. What's that all about?
I may have slightly misunderstood your question there, sorry. So it's when it comes to the actual development that's been built, it's the developer that does name it. So we have control over street naming and numbering, but when it actually comes to a development, and I'm pretty sure the councillors tomorrow will be equally as frustrated as you are, there's not much control we have over that particular issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would agree with you that there are a number of places in East Brentford that suspiciously name themselves Kew Reach. I think it's a very fair point. I think Reece wanted to come in on this.
No, I just wanted to echo that. I also agree. I think as a Brentford fan who was involved with the stadium project, I think we rechristened the whole area Far Kew based on the way they were trying to rename everything Kew. So, yeah, it's frustrating. Unfortunately, how private developers choose to market their buildings is their decision. But I remember pointing out at the time that by the time you've renamed everything else Kew, the only thing called Brentford in that part of Brentford will be the football stadium. They'll have Brentford emblazoned all over the side of it. It's very frustrating, but unfortunately that's the market.
Thank you. Well, we have 1 minute left, Julie. Is it really quick?
I'm just following on from this gentleman. I think most of us are from Brentford, and I think the council, Hounslow Council, should be putting a thing in all their development that they're not to call it Kew. We are in Middlesex, we're not in Surrey, and if you add Kew, that is Surrey. That ups the rate, that ups the cost. Who do we live under now? Brentford, or are we under Surrey, or what? I think part of the demand, when there's a development come from, you've got to push that they don't use Kew, because we are losing our identity.
Thank you, Julie. Matthew, can you note that? I think that has the agreement of everyone in the room, including the councillors, so it'd be great if that could be noted. Well, guys, you are very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I won't blame you if you need to go back. Matthew, I think, is in trouble with his wife because he was supposed to be doing childcare this evening. He came to fill in for Nathan, who couldn't meet it. So can we show appreciation to Bill and Matthew? One of the things we want to set up for future area forums is to have a steering group made up of local residents who can input into important topics, what should be discussed, what should be at the marketplace, or give guidance on any other of those issues. And we had a discussion group about it at the back here. If you missed that, there'll be future options to be involved. But that was led by Lara, who is the vice chair, who's going to give us a little bit of feedback on that now.
Thank you so much. Well, actually, the feedback is that all the questions that Dan just raised were questions that we were talking about that needed to be discussed in the steering group. So achieving a balance of setting themes ahead of time so that we can bring council officers that will be available to answer questions, so you get as little as possible of the all come back to you. So if we know ahead of time the questions that you will bring to us, the themes, we can bring the relevant officers to be here available to answer your questions. However, there's also the point that we need to maintain the level of flexibility when things are urgent and need to be addressed in that moment. We also talked about making sure that the steering group is as representative as possible of the community. So that's really where we need to count on your support, that if you want to be involved in a steering committee like that, which will be shaping the kind of discussions that we have, the way that this room is set up, the days, who comes to it, please do get involved and try to spread the word out of this room as well, so that we can bring people that are not traditionally here to bring their input, their views into this discussion as well. So yeah, we definitely want to keep growing this, and even how the steering group meets will be to the decision of the community as well, how often, where, if there's a bigger steering group that then gets broken down into a steering group per area forum, but also I think the key message that was mentioned today that's important for us to keep in mind is that residents really want a little bit more control and decision-making over what the themes will be, what the discussion will be about. And so we hope that Brentford Area Forum being the first one that will propose this steering group and will trial it out, that it can then be advanced to all of the other area forums as well. So if you're interested, please reach out to Chris if you want to be involved in the steering group. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That segues perfectly into our next section, which is from Chris, who's going to briefly explain the Area Forum Action Plan. So, Chris.
Yeah, so just touching on that, this is kind of a chance for us to kind of better connect with the community, because what we want to do is try and hear more from you as the residents, and this will kind of impact on our agendas moving forward in terms of themes, how we better create our marketplaces. So every discussions that we'll have in future, whether it's meeting up quarterly or monthly, it gives us time to prep for our area forum, and where we can highlight what needs to be addressed when it comes to meeting with our chairs and vice chairs, so we can plan ahead moving forwards, and hopefully see more numbers. This has been a massive turnout for us tonight, and we hope to kind of exceed that in the future to see more faces, because a lot of new faces I haven't seen before, so it's good to kind of see you, and I hope I can better connect with you more, just to hear your opinions, and we can, like Councillor Lara said and Dan said, just to connect with you more. So feel free to get in contact with myself. I'll be outside at the end of the meeting, and any questions you want to raise to me, do let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, now the moment many of you have been waiting for is the open forum, where you can ask any question, with the exception not about individual case. If this is going to be about sort of a quite specific personal thing, do leave your details. That will be private casework. We try and keep the open forum to specific and general issues in the community. So, hands please. Yes, this lady here, if you could just wait for the microphone.
Thank you. Hi, Dan. So my question follows on from the question over there about the current cycle lane, which is running through the high street. Now, I know that construction work is still ongoing, but there has been an increase in accidents on the high street. There's a particular section opposite the fire station which sort of juts out, which is particularly problematic, and obviously the congestion and traffic has increased hugely. Is there any way we can look at this current highway and the concerns around the cycle lane crossing in front of bus stops, but also that section in front of the fire station?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, I mean, yes, I mean, roadworks are always cause problems whilst they're happening. They cause delays, and that's just the unfortunate reality. So, I mean, you know, those plans are in place. What I have asked for is more information on the council website, because I have had quite a lot of emails from people saying, well, what's happening when? You know, when do we expect this section to end? So and that's not really there at the moment. So one thing is more information will become available, so you can see what's planned to happen when, and if there's a delay, we'll make sure that that's put up there as well, so at least you know what's going to be happening. In terms of the cycle lane itself, so it's based on the design that was designed by Transport for London. It was approved by the council back in 2019. That's how long it's taken. Pandemic intervened, all sorts of things intervened, and so that's the specifications to which it's being built. Now, obviously, there is some concern from some quarters around some of the bus stop designs. That is something that Transport for London is looking into, so it is doing a review of those bus stop bypasses and different types of bus stops. So again, once they've finished that, they will report back, and whether that results in any changes of the particular ones in Brentford, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that review.
Thank you, Catherine. It's the lady here.
Just on the same theme, so if the council approved the scheme that's happening there with the cycle lanes, is there anything they can do now to change the scheme that's happening and make Transport for London rethink the plans? Because what's being done there is really dangerous. You've made the lanes really, really narrow. What this means is that emergency vehicles cannot get through there when there is traffic. So people are going to die potentially, and it's just a really dangerous scheme. You're putting pedestrians in danger. Emergency vehicles can't get through. It makes it more dangerous for cyclists as well, who have to go from different sides of the road to the other. Is this something that you don't realise, and are you going to do something about it?
So I'll be honest, no, I don't think the design is going to change. It's currently being built, and so we don't have it in front of us what the final design is at the moment. What you're seeing is how it is with roadworks in place.
But if you approved it, why don't you know what the design is?
Sorry, that's not what I mean. Is what you are seeing is not the final design. It's roadworks.
A lot of it looks done already.
Okay. Well, you've got the road is narrowed.
I'm not making a complaint about the roadworks. I understand that things have to.
Okay, so
be
no,
done,
the design is not. The design is not going to change. It's a single, single lane each side of the road as it was before.
So how will emergency vehicles get through?
As they did before.
Before there was a wide road where people could pull over to the side and let emergency vehicles go through.
We will come back to you if there's time, but you've had 4 or 5 questions and some people have had 0. I know Julie, who actually has had a few questions already, not helping the point. We had a hand up first.
Actually, I'm just doing a bit of an update about tonight. I don't know what the council's doing, but they've turned the actual temporary traffic lights off where we're talking about, and it is absolute chaos down there at the moment. Someone's not bothered to turn on the traffic lights.
Julie, which location is this?
Premier Inn, where we're talking about at the moment, there's no traffic lights, so the traffic cannot get through. They're jamming up between the roads. When we were coming down, there was near enough road rage. And if a bus comes, I dread to think what's going to happen. So maybe someone tonight can phone up the contractors and get the traffic lights turned back on.
If those lights aren't working, I will report them now.
Brilliant. Just want to see someone who hasn't asked a quick... Just 1 second, sir. This gentleman here, just in the front row, keep your hand up. Yeah, you. Then we'll come to you next.
Hi, so my question is, actually on the road design that's leading out from New Road / Ealing Road into the Great West Road main roundabout, what is being done about that? Because I think whoever approved that idea doesn't actually live in the area, because all they've done is change the settings on the traffic lights, and that's just called major congestion that goes all the way back from the bus stop, leading all the way down back to McDonald's. And if there's any sort of peak, if it's a peak day.
You're talking about the changing of the phasing on the traffic lights?
Absolutely, yeah. So.
Yep.
I don't know if that's within your remit or anything, or if you can at least hear our opinions on that. But it just caused major inconvenience for everybody in the area.
It's actually a TfL choice, but we do have input. Does someone want to comment on that?
I agree that I don't know how, I haven't been up Ealing Road recently, but certainly earlier after the changes were made, it was terrible. I had a lot of arguments with TfL and the traffic people in Hounslow, as did Catherine. The reason that it's changed at the roundabout is apparently the arrangement that we had before, that all of us were used to, where we sort of filtered past people who are turning right, that is illegal. It's been illegal for years, but it was not run by TfL, it was run by National Highways, and they didn't enforce it. So they had to put in new traffic lights because the old ones were falling apart, and the new ones, that you cannot, it's not, A, it's illegal, and B, you cannot program traffic lights to do it the way it was done before. So we, all that has been done, as far as I'm aware, Catherine might know more, is that they've been playing with the phasing to try and make it better.
I think the phasing is improving because it's uneven on each side.
I don't think it's that much better.
Yeah, it's uneven on each side. One side takes much quicker than the other. So that, if you can't immediately change it back to the original settings, at least improve the phasing so it allows enough traffic to flow through and prevent major congestion all down that road. Sometimes it can take us 10 minutes to get from New Road bus stop to the next bus stop, which previously used to take 2 minutes.
So, yeah, so they are looking at the phasing. They also, there is potential for a different design there, which, if we all cross our fingers hard enough, might happen the next financial year. I don't know. We're talking to TfL about it and trying to push it forward.
Thank you. So do you live in New Road? Yeah. So your two councillors are Lara and Guy. What I would say, this is something we're all quite, but especially them, are quite aware of. What I suggest is you take their details after the meeting and see how you could sort of stay in the loop in that way. So the gentleman behind, did you have your hand up previously? We just wait for the microphone.
Sorry, at the traffic outside Premier Inn earlier at 5:30, there was actually a policeman, or she was a lady policeman, whatever that is, directing the traffic. And then when I came out about 7:30, they seemed to have gone, but the traffic was certainly still there.
Thank you.
It's obviously known about.
Thank you very much. Gareth, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to this issue about doctors' surgeries, I think people get confused. The NHS does not set up a doctor's surgery. They do not run doctor's surgeries. They do not recruit doctors. It's all done by private enterprise. So if you're a doctor, you set up a business, maybe with other doctors, and set up a surgery. Your main clients are NHS patients, which is why the NHS logo is all over the place. So people sometimes think, because they see the NHS sign there, that it's the NHS that sets them up and says, oh, we've got more population in Brentford, as the lady's saying, we need another surgery. We, the NHS, should find some doctors and put them there. It doesn't work that way around. And it goes right the way back to when the NHS was set up and Nye Bevan had to bribe the doctors to come into the scheme in the first place. So that's the system, and it does confuse people, but that's why, or part of the reason why we don't have enough surgeries, enough doctors. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. That is a good point. Gentleman just straight ahead of me. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm just coming back to what was said about the bike lanes. Round by, I mean, a typical example, planning example I've noticed is around there's a bike lane that runs through the Waterman's Park that comes down from Edward VII Bridge, comes down through Waterman's Park. There's a bike lane that's parallel to it, that's in the road. I mean, I don't understand what that bike lane's doing there if you've got a bike lane that's running through the Waterman's Park. It's very narrow. Yeah. The road round that part of Brentford, the road round that part is from the North Road. It's a very, very narrow road. It's a river.
About 100 metres back towards Kew Bridge, the bike lane is what's called bi-directional, where you have going in two separate directions next to each other. And just after the Steam Museum, it splits. And so you've got the bike lane in the road, which is on the heading east, and the westbound section cuts through Waterman's Park. So some people I know in Waterman's Park use the bike lane going both ways, which they're not supposed to do. The section through Waterman's Park is for the westward flow of bikes.
I don't understand why east and west could not run through the Waterman's Park. There is enough space. The road is wide. The bike lane is wide enough.
Sure.
It's not cars and that's running down. And really, it's just that area is specialized. It's a specialized thought that's needed there. That's really something that's just done to really slow down the traffic.
Sure.
I'm going into the city working. I work shift work. I do shift work. I needed to get to the city quite quickly. I've seen
so we've got a
buses
specific. We've got an answer. Catherine's got an answer on why it's not going both ways through Waterman's Park.
Yeah. So as I said, this was a design that was approved. It was consulted on twice and approved back in 2019. And I mean, if you look at where we have put in the bi-directional cycle lanes, like Chiswick High Road, I mean, a lot of people tell me they don't like that. Actually, it's worked out pretty well. But I do think if we put in a bi-directional one here, we probably would get complaints as well. But what I will say is, possibly if we were designing it now, it would be different, because we have seen that the bi-directional ones actually do work well, but it's not the design that's been approved. It's not what's been funded and approved is what's going in. And well, as I said earlier, what you're seeing now, those delays to traffic, to buses that you're seeing now, is because of the roadwork. So once the cycle lane is in, once it's finished, there won't be any delays, not due to the cycle lane, because you'll be back to the same traffic lanes that you had before.
I think. Sorry, did you have your hand up? Oh, it was for your friend. Oh, thank you.
Hello. Talking about Chiswick High Road, there's no roadworks there, so it's all finished, and the cycle lane is there. On the top of that, there is the car lanes. They look like they are very narrow, and the cycle lane is as wide as a car lane. On the top of that, what makes it very dangerous, there is a bus stop just in the middle of the road, and the old bus stop is still there. So what's the point of having two bus stops when there is car lanes that are so narrow, if you see what I'm talking about? No, Chiswick High
this
Road.
is the Syon and Brentford Area Forum. If you have a question about the cycle lane in Chiswick, I know they would be very happy.
The lady mentioned the Chiswick.
Okay.
Somebody asked about Chiswick, and the lady answered. So I'm just saying
that
so there.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, people have different views about the Chiswick, the cycle lane in Chiswick.
Yes, Emily at the back.
Hi. Yeah. My question is brief but very nauseating. Could you tell me and everybody else who's in charge of the traffic marshals on match days at the GJ? And I use all match days, not just Brentford's. What's happening is that they're ignoring the phasing of the traffic lights to allow a traffic flow on and off of Kew Bridge, which is allowing a huge backlog of traffic going east towards Kew Bridge or west coming from the Chiswick roundabout. And it needs looking at, and it looks near looking at sooner rather than later?
I assume, mine is a lot louder. Assume they are contracted by the football club to direct traffic when there is an overflow of or more people than that are usually there. Sometimes the traffic is too much that they can't just rely on the traffic lights and have to actually guide manually. So, but I assume that they're contracted by the football stadium.
Yeah, Mel, I don't. Just to follow on, I mean, I think Lara's right. They're contracted by the club. Obviously, you've got a very narrow pavement coming over Kew Bridge, and obviously as a season ticket holder, I do that walk every home game. It is to make sure that people aren't getting hit. I mean, if you go to other away grounds in London for games, they shut down entire roads around White Hart Lane, which is a very, very busy part of town. In Highbury, they shut down lots and lots of roads. We're not shutting down roads. We're managing the traffic so that people can get across. It seems to work, from what I can see, quite well. And it is only for a limited period of time directly before and after the football match. I must admit, I don't see the issue myself, and obviously the crowd safety, not being hit by cars, should take priority over people having to wait a few extra minutes on Kew Bridge. I'm sorry, that's where the priority is. It's crowd safety.
Yes, I can see a hand. I can't see who it is. Is that Paul?
In June 23, 50 residents of the Butt CPZ presented a petition for the hours to be consulted on. We were told it would happen, the consultation, in 23. It didn't. And at the last area forum, I brought it up again, and I was promised that it would happen in either January or February this year. And I was even sent an email from planning saying that the consultation would happen. It hasn't, and I can see no reason why it's ever going to happen. What I would like to ask directly my councillors is what they're going to do to make sure it does happen quickly.
Yeah, I can confirm it's happening in March.
Is that a real promise in March, or is that one of these January, February, March type promises?
I'm very hopeful it will happen in March.
Okay, so we've all heard it will happen in March. Good.
Any other questions? Yep, Shirley.
Hello. Hello. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah. Just to go back to Catherine was saying about the Waterman's Park cycle lane. I use that regularly, and there is a line, for two cyclists to cycle both ways in that area. And when I'm cycling up, I often see cyclists coming towards me, and there is space there for two cyclists to go both ways. So just to confirm that I do a lot of cycling, and I do, the roads around are fairly safe, I think, at the moment.
Thanks, Shirley. And who knows, maybe there will be adjustments in future, but just it's not changing at the moment.
Okay. Yes. Oh, do you know what? The gentleman behind you hasn't spoken, so I want to go to him first. We'll come back to you.
Thanks very much. Can I just ask what's happening about the police station and the Waterman's Art Centre?
I think I've updated on this at previous area forums, and unfortunately there is nothing new to update on it. We're in the same position that we were. Which is obviously the scheme as originally consented, as many schemes everywhere are because of what's happened to the economy. It's not likely to happen in that exact form. It will need to come back and be changed to make it viable. And as far as I know, that is the process that is ongoing. So there is no immediate plan to start works on building anything at this stage. And we're obviously very keen to see that whatever changes need to be made are made, and a new application is brought forward, and eventually we get something built on that site. Because I think we're all desperately keen to see it get redeveloped.
Then the gentleman just in front with a hat.
Yeah, just to further what the lady was talking about, the Waterman's Park bike lane, coming back to that again because that's very important. Like, for me, it's put in a good 20 minutes on travel. Even before that bike lane actually came in, It's for some reason travelling into like from Brentford to Chiswick, from Brentford to Hammersmith has become so like it's a good 20 minutes that's been put on top. It's very important that the bike lane that is outside the St. George's Church that's been renovated into houses or flats, it needs to be removed. I've noticed that when the buses are going, the guy's he's afraid. He seems to slow down. He's fearful of driving the bus whenever he sees an Arctic coming along or a bus coming the other way. It's just unacceptable that the B3115 is quite an important road. That there is a bike lane that's been put there. I think it's an irritant. It hasn't really been put there, planned properly, and put there for the benefit of the public or the people in the area at all. And I live not far from there. I live near the McDonald's. I hear the noise, the beeping, the all of that going on through day and night due to that kind of planning. And that hasn't even really taken full effect yet. But for me, the way I'm looking at it, there's two, like the Grace lady said earlier, there is space for bike lanes in both directions through the Waterman's Park, and that by the Brentford St. George's, it needs to be taken down. It needs to be reversed. All right.
Thank you. Yes, just before you, this lady I don't think has spoken, then we'll come back to you.
My question is, I live in York Road in Brentford, and we used to have a really useful car park at the top of Orchard Road, where I live, we've got Orchard Road, Glenhurst Road, and York Road. And then the council has now built, I think it's 5 council homes on that car park, because the decision was taken that you're going to use that car park for that purpose, which is fine, we need more homes. But you also promised at the same time that you would actually find and allocate the car park spaces that we lost in our little patch of Brentford. But as residents, we are actually still waiting for you to come back and tell us where we can park. Because if you come to our roads, especially in the evening, it's bumper to bumper. And if you actually come back late, there's nowhere to park.
I know that the
car park was a very, very useful facility, which was actually taken away from us, despite all the opposition that came your way.
So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know that the ward councillors, Guy and Lara, have done a lot of work on that, so I'm going to let them comment on that.
Yeah, this is, I know very well, and it's something that I have come to realize the problem early on, April 2022. Firstly, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that the 5 homes that were built were the right thing to do, because we do need those affordable homes, and they're family homes. That's just to note that point. On the parking spots, there has been a reallocation of parking spots. Some of them have gone to EV charging points. We do know, I know you can see your face, we do know that there was potential miscalculation on how many were able to be delivered following the construction. I think 3 are still to be delivered after the construction is finalized. However, it has been clear that it's still not enough for the residents of Orchard, Glenhurst, York, and Windmill as well. Guy and I have been really clear with officers. Officers know this as well, that it has made the situation for residents really difficult in terms of parking. So we still have been working with residents. I don't know if you're involved with the Orchard Road residents group. There has been a lot of conversations. We have gone to meet the residents quite a few times. We're still observing what options can be done in terms of the garage spaces as well, if that can be made better to allow more parking spaces in the area. So we do know that the problem has not been solved, and we've still been looking at how it can be by adding more parking spaces on the road, but also with the garage space to be made more accessible as well.
I'd also advise, if you don't have them, to get Lara and Guy's details to be able to... Great. Question over here.
Yeah, on exactly the same point, those 5 houses are supposedly not going to have parking spaces, but the fact is that from 5:30 they can park anywhere, because we only have CPZ till 5:30. The weekend we can't park at all when there's football on, because our road, we don't have any CPZ at all at the weekend. And you're also building next to the cafe flats, and I'd like to know if they've got parking and what the arrangements are for their parking.
Yeah, that's another good point, that they are not, the people from those 5 homes will not be able to access a parking permit. But you're right, that doesn't stop them from buying a car and trying to park on the street. However, then we've tried to talk to the residents about reviewing the CPZ, and most of the responses that we received back were that they do not want to change the CPZ hours.
I believe that. I haven't been spoken to, and I live there.
Okay.
That lady does, so I don't
If you want to change the CPZ, get a petition, 10 signatures on it, present it to your ward councillors.
And can I ask what's happening about the flats that are being built? Where's the parking is for them?
Which flats?
Flats opposite where the cafe is now, where that building's being done? Right opposite the station, along the little row of shops on Boston Road.
Station Parade. You mean Station Parade?
Yes.
No, that's not with parking. So again, people will not be receiving parking permits themselves.
But they'll still be able to park there if they want, come 5:30 on the weekend.
Well, again, technically they're not allowed to, but we can't stop people buying a car.
Well, but also that there is potential for changing the hours of any CPZ. So if that's something...
Present a petition with 10... Okay, well, bring it back. Bring a petition with 10 signatures to me at the next area forum. Yeah. Yes, this lady here.
Hi. So there's a lot of construction and planning proposals around Pump Alley, which is part of the St Paul's Conservation Area. Can I ask who's responsible for that area?
The relevant ward councillors are me, Catherine, and Balraj, who's not here.
Brilliant. Okay, then we'll probably catch up with you earlier. I mean, my concern personally is the impact of the current Heidelberg build, which has had a significant impact on living in that area and on our homes. You know, there's the cracks, the noise, the pollution, you know, the disruption to everyday life. But also, on the back of our property, there's now a proposal submitted to convert Concord House from 14 units to 64 student units, which I think does no benefit for Brentford.
So, in terms of Heidelberg, yeah, I mean, it's a major construction, and there is disruption that comes with that. If there's a specific issue, please reach out to me or Catherine, and we can look into it. In terms of Concord House, that is currently sitting with the planning department. If you have objections you want to make about that, you can write to the planning department. If you're not sure how to do that, please email me, and I will make sure that happens.
I've done lots of emails to the planning department.
Have you registered your objection?
Lots of objections.
Sure. So they will take that into consideration, and then you have, depending on where that goes, that might go to the planning committee, in which case there might be opportunity for you to speak as an objector to it.
And where do you stand, just out of interest, on the developer lobbying local residents to try and get them on board before that's been signed off by the council?
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
Where do you stand on the developer lobbying local residents to try and get their support ahead of the planning permission being approved?
The developer...
I mean, for me, that's a conflict of interest. The developer having meetings with local residents to try and get them on board.
We do encourage developers to consult with local residents.
This isn't consulting.
Yeah.
This is explicitly saying if you look after me, I will look after
so
you.
you wrote to me about that, and obviously that's not acceptable, which
It's
is
not.
what I said in reply.
Yeah.
But just we would, just to reiterate, we would encourage them to talk to residents and to get your views, but obviously they shouldn't be trying to...
It was beyond that.
Yeah.
I think what we do want to encourage is developers talking to their neighbours and understanding what would make an application more acceptable to them. And we want to see those conversations happening early on. I'm not entirely sure of the details of your email with Catherine. I will catch up on it. But in terms of developers speaking to their neighbours and understanding what they would like to see in development, we'd encourage that. But I'll understand more when I've spoken to Catherine. This lady here.
Yeah, there was an ask for some feedback on the garage's sort of proposal or development at the end of Glenhurst Road. I just wanted an update on when a decision was being made, if there was going to be a consultation on it, what are the next steps? We just didn't hear anything back.
Can I speak? I think. There were two conversation rounds, which were not formal consultations because there was no plan in place to be consulted on. But there were conversations of what would people ideally like that garage space to be or not be. And since then, the conversations were really, really mixed. And we have also, the council has also come across some legal issues in if anything could be done in that space. So before any actual proposal can be put in place, we need to understand how to get through those legal issues first. But the hope, the ideal is still that something can be done in that car parking, the garage space, because just to be clear, it would not be able to be housing. Don't ask me, but under the earth has some stuff that wouldn't allow it to be housing, but there would be the potential for like an open car park or some actual green space, and still the garage spaces as well. Again, these are just potential. There's not a plan in place. It's something, just a conversation that we want to continue having, because most of those garage spaces are outdated. They do not fit a real car, modern car inside them. So it's how can that place just be suited for the current time?
Oh, sorry, how are the updates shared? Because I didn't hear any information back.
Yeah, it hasn't been shared because unfortunately there's like no tangible update to be given. Like what I just said to you is like some potentials that are still out there. Once we're able to find out more from the legal perspective, we're then hopefully going to be able to have a plan to present to the community, again, through letters, through a web page on the council website, as well as consultation meetings.
Okay, cool. So we'll get a notice about the meetings.
Just before we take any further questions, I'd like to draw your attention to this beautiful I Love Area Forum tote bags. And I can see that you're all thinking, how on earth could I get my hands on one of those? The answer is very simple. You have feedback forms either on your seats or you can get them as you go out. If you fill in the feedback form, you don't go into a draw to win one of these. Everyone who fills in a feedback form gets one of these very glamorous tote bags. So just want to say that before I ask. Is there any more questions for the open forum? Yes, Julia.
Thank you. Might be a bit personal, but we have been instructed to sell the development site at the Army Surplus shop on the High Street.
Down towards Kew Bridge.
Yeah, Kew Bridge. And I've got lots and lots of developers coming up to us saying, we want to buy it. I would like to speak to somebody at the council who can help advise about what should be there, what can be there. And I've contacted the council, but I haven't heard anything back.
Yeah,
because if you guys want something nice, I'm there.
Reece is the guy to talk to, I think.
Yeah, it's in that site's in Minor Marina's ward. So please email us, and we'd be happy to pick it up with the planning department and find you the right person to see. We'd love to find the right buyer and get the right scheme on that site.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Also, do we need more dentists in Brentford? I know more doctors, but do we need more dentists?
Yes, I believe is the short answer to that.
Okay, so can I speak to anybody about Block D, because I've got dentists who'd like take some space there, possibly?
Absolutely welcome the conversation.
Who would that be?
Is this the dentist from Albany Parade?
No.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I think get in touch with either me or Catherine, and we'll put you in touch regarding Block D. Any more questions? No. Well, can oh, what? Yes. This question is going to close the forum, so no pressure. Better be a good one.
It may be a good one. Okay, so I'm a big fan of bus stops, and I'm really a big fan of the traffic information, the bus arrival information. So, can you confirm that when the bus shelter is put in on the south side of the Brentford High Street, more or less where Morrison's is, it will have traffic information on it?
I can certainly check with TfL whether that's in their plans, and if it's not, I'll lobby for that to happen.
Fantastic. Great. Well, councillors, can we agree the minutes on the 18th of December? I've checked them. I'm happy. Are we all agreed on those? The next area forum meeting is the 10th of June. I've already... Chris is coming. He's like, have you pimped the tote bags? I have. I pimped them hard. You missed it. Fill in your forms. Next meeting is on the 10th of June. The location will be published. And with that, I close the meeting. Thank you for coming.